but a gangster. Ain't nothing but a gangster. Ain't nothing but a gangster.
We're brought into this briefing today to talk to us about that attack on Friday. I had hoped and expected to receive more information outlining the legal, factual, and moral justification for the attack. I was left somewhat unsatisfied on that front. The briefing lasted only 75 minutes, whereupon our briefers left. This, however, is not the biggest problem I have with the briefing, which I would add was probably the worst briefing I've seen, at least on a military issue, in the 9 years I've served in the United States Senate. What I found so distressing about that briefing was that one of the messages we received from the briefers was, do not debate, do not discuss the issue of the appropriateness of further military intervention against Iran. And that if you do, you'll be emboldening Iran. The implication being that we would somehow be making America less safe by having a debate or a discussion about the appropriateness of further military involvement against the government of Iran. Now, I find this insulting and demeaning, not personally, but to the office that each of the 100 senators in this building happens to hold. I find it insulting and I find it demeaning to the Constitution of the United States, to which we've all sworn an oath. It is, after all, the prerogative of the legislative branch to declare war. Article 1, Section 8 makes that very clear. Alexander Hamilton in Federalist Number 69 made clear that this was a sharp contrast from the form of government that we had prior to the Revolution, a form of government in which the executive, the king, had the power to take us to war. He did not need the parliament to weigh in on it, to support it. That was the parliament's job after the fact, after we had gone into war. This, Hamilton explained in Federalist 69, is exactly the reason why this power was put in Article 1, Section 8, in the branch of government most accountable to the people at the most regular intervals. When we send our brave soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines into harm's way, we owe the American people the decent courtesy to follow the Constitution, to debate and discuss these actions. For them to tell us that either through a War Powers Act resolution or otherwise, for us to debate and discuss these things on the Senate floor would somehow weaken the American cause and embolden Iran in any other actions, I find very insulting. Now look, I hope that they'll come back and they'll say, no, you misunderstood us. We didn't say that at all. I wish I could believe that. I will note that when those words were uttered, not one of the briefers stood in objection. Not one of the briefers pushed back on that and said, we want to make clear that this is still the constitutional prerogative of Congress. I also want to make clear that I walked into that briefing undecided as to whether to support the resolution under the War Powers Act introduced by Senator Kaine. Now, Senator Kaine and I have had some discussions. I've got some concerns with some of the language, particularly in some of the whereas clauses that he's introduced. He's agreed to make some changes. And I can say that after that briefing is what changed my mind. That briefing is what brought me on board, together with the amendments that Senator Kaine has agreed to make. I'm now going to support it. I walked into the briefing undecided. I walked out decided, specifically because of what happened in that briefing. It is not acceptable for officials within the executive branch of government, I don't care whether they're with the CIA, with the Department of Defense, or otherwise, to come in and tell us that we can't debate and discuss the appropriateness of military intervention against Iran. It's un-American, it's unconstitutional, and it's wrong. And I hope and expect that they will show greater deference to their own limited power in the future, and to the power that belongs to Congress. This is not about us, it's not about any one of us. This is about our fidelity to those we represent. These powers are not ours. They don't belong to any of us. But when we allow them to be exercised through the wrong branches of government, with the wrong process, when you don't have debate and discussion, you don't allow the process itself to correct itself for the American people who will be most affected by these decisions to weigh in. That was insulting. That was demeaning to the process ordained by the Constitution, and I find it completely unacceptable. On that basis, I've decided to support Senator Kaine's resolution subject to the minor amendments that he and I discussed earlier today. I still haven't had the questions answered that I came into that briefing expecting to ask. They left after 75 minutes. Now, I understand these are busy people. They've got a lot of demands on their time. They're appearing before a coordinate branch of government, responsible for their funding, for their confirmation, for any approval of any military action they might undertake. They had to leave after 75 minutes while they're in the process of telling us that we need to be good little boys and girls and run along and not debate this in public. I find that absolutely insane. I think it's unacceptable. And so I don't know what they had in mind. I went in there hoping to get more specifics as far as the factual, legal, moral justification for what they did. I'm still undecided on that issue, in part because we never got to the details. Every time we got close, they'd say, well, we can't discuss that here because it's really sensitive. We're in a skiff. We're in a secure underground bunker where all electronic devices have to be checked at the door, and they still refuse to tell us. I find that really upsetting.
If you got a better woman, another woman, two of them members, most woman.